Ryan had never planned to land on this strange green world. His small shuttle had broken down during a long journey, forcing him to search for a place to repair it. The landing was rough, and the forest he stumbled into felt endless, giant trees, thick vines, and the sound of unknown creatures echoing all around. He moved carefully through the shadows, carrying only a small pack and a broken signal tool. The forest smelled of wet leaves and wildflowers. Somewhere far away, he thought he heard the call of birds, or maybe it was something else. He did not know. Ryan pushed forward, hoping to find water or maybe signs of intelligent life. But then, his ears caught a new sound. It was not the rustle of leaves, not the cry of an animal. It was sharper. A voice. A cry for help. He froze, listening. The voice was high, frightened, and filled with desperation. His heart began to race. Without thinking twice, Ryan ran toward the sound. Branches whipped against his arms, and the ground was uneven, but he didn't slow down. The cry grew louder until suddenly, he burst into a clearing. What he saw made him stop in shock. A young alien girl stood trapped against a rock wall. She had soft features, long hair that shone like silver in the sunlight, and cat-like ears that twitched in fear. A striped tail curled behind her, bristling with tension. She clutched a short wooden spear, her hands shaking. In front of her, a massive beast prowled. It looked like a mixture of a wolf and a lizard, with scales across its back and teeth sharp enough to tear stone. Its yellow eyes glowed with hunger, locked on the frightened girl. The girl cried out again, but her voice was weak. She looked around as if searching for escape, but there was nowhere to run. Ryan's instincts took over. He had no weapon, only a few stones in his pack and his own courage. Still, he could not just stand by and watch. The beast roared and lunged forward. At that exact moment, Ryan grabbed the biggest stone he could find and hurled it with all his strength. The rock smashed against the beast's side, making it stumble for a second. The creature turned, its glowing eyes fixing on him now. Ryan's stomach tightened. He had gotten its attention, but now he was the target. "Run," he shouted, waving his arms at the alien girl, though he was not sure if she could even understand him. The beast snarled and charged. Ryan jumped aside at the last moment, grabbing another stone from the ground. He struck again, hitting its face. The beast howled in rage. The girl did not run away. Instead, she stared at Ryan with wide eyes, shocked that this stranger, this human, was fighting for her. Ryan moved quickly, circling around, trying to stay out of the beast's reach. His body ached already, but he refused to stop. He picked up a fallen branch, holding it like a spear. It was rough, but better than nothing. The beast lunged again, snapping its jaws. Ryan thrust the branch forward, jabbing it into the side of its neck. The branch cracked, but the beast roared in pain, staggering backward. Breathing hard, Ryan shouted at it, trying to look bigger than he was. His heart pounded so loudly it almost drowned out the sounds of the forest. The beast hesitated for a moment, confused by his stubborn resistance. Then, with another low growl, it backed away slowly. Its yellow eyes shifted between Ryan and the girl before it finally turned and disappeared into the trees. For a long moment, silence filled the clearing. Only the sound of Ryan's heavy breathing remained. He dropped the broken branch and pressed a hand against his bruised side. The alien girl slowly stepped forward. Her silver hair fell around her shoulders, and her green eyes studied him carefully. She seemed unsure, almost frightened, yet also curious. "You, human," she whispered in a soft, uncertain voice. Her words were rough, but he understood enough. Ryan nodded, still catching his breath. "Yes. Human." The girl blinked, her cat-like ears twitching. Then, to his surprise, she lowered her wooden spear and gave a small bow. "You, fight beast. Save Nira, she said quietly, tapping her chest. Nira. So, her name was Nira. Ryan gave a small smile despite his pain. Ryan, he said, pointing to himself. For the first time, Nira's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. She looked at him not with fear now, but with something different, something softer. As the sunlight filtered through the tall trees, Ryan realized his journey on this strange planet had just begun. He had no idea what awaited him, but one thing was certain: saving Nira had changed everything. The clearing was still quiet after the beast fled, but Ryan's body trembled with exhaustion. His arms were sore, and a dull pain spread across his ribs where the creature had struck him with its heavy tail. He pressed his hand against the bruise and winced. Nira, the alien girl, stood near him, her cat-like ears twitching nervously as she looked around the forest. She seemed to be listening for any sign of the beast's return. Only when she was sure it was gone did she kneel beside him. "You, hurt?" she said softly, her voice uncertain but filled with worry. Ryan tried to smile, though sweat dripped down his forehead. "Just a little," he answered. She tilted her head, studying him carefully. Then, without asking, she pulled a small pouch from her waist. Inside were strange leaves that glowed faintly with a pale blue light. She crushed a few in her hands, releasing a fresh, mint-like smell, and pressed the mixture against his bruised side. The cool sensation spread across his skin, easing the pain slightly. Ryan looked at her in surprise. "What is that?" he asked. Nira searched for the right words. "Healing plant," she said slowly. "Forest gift." Ryan nodded, impressed. He had seen many alien medicines during his travels, but never one that worked so quickly. The sharp ache in his ribs faded into a dull throb. Nira's green eyes stayed fixed on him as she worked, her hands surprisingly gentle. She seemed unsure of what to say, but the way she focused on helping him spoke louder than words. When she finished, she sat back on her knees and looked down at the broken branch he had used as a weapon. "Human, brave," she whispered, her ears lowering slightly. "No one fight beast. Only run." Ryan let out a small laugh, though it came out tired. "Running wasn't an option," he replied. "It was going to hurt you." For a moment, Nira was silent. Her tail curled slowly behind her, and her expression softened. She seemed touched, even confused, as if she could not understand why a stranger would risk his life for her. The wind rustled through the tall trees, and the sounds of the forest slowly returned: birds calling, leaves shaking, insects humming. Nira stood up, then reached out her hand toward him. "Come," she said firmly. "Village. Safe." Ryan hesitated. He was far from his shuttle, and trusting strangers on an unknown world was risky. But looking into her determined eyes, he felt he had no better choice. Besides, his body needed rest, and his shuttle repairs could wait. With her help, he rose to his feet. Nira guided him through the dense forest, moving with graceful steps as if she had lived there all her life. She glanced back often, making sure he could keep up. Ryan noticed how her silver hair caught the light, glowing faintly like moonlight in the shadows. They walked for what felt like hours, crossing streams and climbing over roots. At one point, Ryan stumbled, but Nira caught his arm quickly. Though smaller than him, her grip was strong and steady. "You, heavy," she said, her lips twitching into a faint smile for the first time. Ryan chuckled. "Sorry about that." Finally, the thick trees parted, and Ryan saw lights ahead. It was not firelight but soft orbs hanging in the branches, glowing gently like captured stars. Beneath them stood a small village, built from wood and stone, shaped into the roots of the great trees. The homes blended with the forest, almost as if they grew from the earth itself. Children with the same cat-like ears as Nira ran through the paths, while adults worked near fires and carried baskets of fruit. When they saw Ryan, the entire village froze. Curious eyes turned to him, and whispers filled the air. Nira raised her hand to quiet them. Save me, she said loudly in her own language, though she added broken human words for Ryan's sake. Human brave. Human fight beast. The villagers stared at him with surprise and doubt. Some narrowed their eyes, clearly suspicious. Others murmured among themselves. No human had likely walked among them before. An older man with white hair and long ears stepped forward, leaning on a carved staff. His gaze was sharp but calm. He spoke in a deep voice, and though Ryan could not understand the words, Nira quickly translated. "Elder say, why you here?" she asked, looking at Ryan. Ryan hesitated, then replied honestly. "My ship, broken. I landed here by accident. I only want to fix it and leave." Nira repeated his words to the elder, who listened carefully. The elder stroked his chin, then finally nodded. "He may stay. But watch," Nira translated. "Village, not sure." Ryan bowed slightly, trying to show respect. "Thank you," he said. The villagers slowly returned to their tasks, though many still cast wary glances at him. Nero led him toward a small hut at the edge of the village. Inside, a soft mat of woven leaves lay on the floor. "Rest here," she said gently. "Safe now." Ryan sat down, sighing with relief. His body was exhausted, but his mind kept returning to the moment in the clearing. The beast's roar, the fear in Nira's eyes, and the way she whispered her name to him, it all felt unreal. As night fell, he lay back on the mat, listening to the quiet hum of the forest outside. He knew his journey had only just begun, but something told him this meeting with Nira would change everything. When Ryan woke the next morning, soft light filtered into the small hut. The air smelled fresh, filled with the scent of flowers and damp earth. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then, the memory of the fight with the beast, and of Nira's silver hair and gentle voice, returned to him. He sat up slowly, stretching his sore muscles. His ribs still ached, but thanks to the glowing herbs Nira had used, the pain was bearable. Outside, he could hear voices, children laughing, and the sound of tools working. Pushing aside the woven curtain at the door, Ryan stepped into the village. What he saw amazed him. The homes were built into the giant roots and trunks of towering trees. Wooden bridges connected platforms high above, and glowing orbs hung like lanterns, giving the whole place a soft, magical glow. Villagers moved gracefully through their tasks, some weaving nets, others carrying baskets of fruit, and children playing with wooden toys shaped like small animals. But when they noticed Ryan, the laughter and chatter died down. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. Some were curious, some suspicious, and a few openly fearful. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, aware of how out of place he looked. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, and unlike them, he had no ears or tail. Then Nira appeared. She carried a basket of fruits in her arms, her silver hair catching the morning light. When she saw him, her face brightened with a smile. She walked over quickly. "You wake," she said warmly. "Come." She offered him one of the round fruits from her basket. It had a smooth, golden skin. Ryan bit into it carefully, and sweet juice filled his mouth. He nodded in thanks. "Delicious." Nira's tail flicked happily behind her. She looked proud, as if she had given him a special gift. But the moment was broken when several villagers approached. Their expressions were hard, and their eyes fixed on Ryan. One of them, a tall man with dark stripes on his arms, spoke sharply in their language. Ryan could not understand, but the tone was clear: he was not welcome. Nira frowned and stepped in front of him. She spoke quickly, pointing at Ryan and making fierce gestures, as if retelling the story of the beast. Her voice rose, filled with passion. The villagers listened but did not seem convinced. One of them spat on the ground and turned away. Another folded his arms, glaring. Only the children continued to stare at Ryan with wide, curious eyes. Ryan lowered his voice. "They don't trust me," he said quietly. Nira glanced at him, her ears lowering slightly. "Not yet," she admitted. "But, they will see." She led him to the center of the village, where the elder waited. The old man leaned on his staff, his eyes sharp and wise. Nira bowed deeply before him and spoke quickly in her language. She gestured at Ryan again and again, mimicking the fight with the beast. At one point, she even crouched low, baring her teeth to imitate the creature. The villagers laughed softly at her performance, though the elder did not smile. Instead, he studied Ryan with a long, unreadable gaze. Finally, he raised his hand, and the crowd quieted. Through slow words and careful gestures, the elder spoke. Nira translated as best as she could. "Elder say, you may stay. Short time," she explained. "But must work. Must help. Not free." Ryan nodded quickly. "I understand. I will help." The elder gave a single nod and tapped his staff against the ground. The villagers murmured again, but this time their tone was softer. The decision was final. From that moment, Ryan began learning their ways. He helped carry heavy baskets from the forest, cut wood with stone tools, and fetched water from the river. His human strength impressed some of the villagers, though others still watched with suspicion. One day, he noticed a wooden water wheel near the river that was broken. The villagers had given up trying to repair it, using buckets instead. Ryan studied it carefully and realized he could fix it with simple adjustments. Using vines and carved wood, he repaired the gears, and soon the wheel turned smoothly again. When the water flowed back into the village channels, the people gasped in surprise. Children laughed and splashed in the water, while even the suspicious man with stripes stared in grudging respect. Nira's face lit up as she clapped her hands. "See? Human clever," she told them proudly. From then on, the villagers looked at Ryan differently. They no longer turned away as quickly. Some even greeted him with cautious nods. At night, when the work was done, Ryan often sat with Nira under the glowing orbs. She told him simple words of her language, teaching him slowly. He taught her a few human words in return. One evening, as they sat side by side, Nira's voice dropped to a whisper. "When beast come? I was afraid. But you came. You fight. You stay." She looked at him, her green eyes shining softly. "With you, safe." Ryan felt a warmth spread in his chest at her words. For the first time since he had crashed, he did not feel alone. The village was still not fully his home, but little by little, he was becoming part of it. And though the forest remained dangerous, he now had a reason to face it. Days slowly turned into weeks, and Ryan began to feel the rhythm of life inside the forest village. At first, he had been only a guest, watched carefully by the villagers. But over time, with Nira's help, he started to understand their way of living and became more than an outsider. Every morning, the village woke early. The sound of birds mixed with the hum of insects, and the glowing forest orbs faded as sunlight filtered through the trees. Villagers stepped out of their homes, carrying baskets, tools, or weapons. Some left to hunt, others gathered fruit, while children played under the roots of the giant trees. Ryan joined them in their daily tasks. He carried heavy logs, repaired huts, and learned how to use simple tools made from bone and stone. Though his body grew tired, he found a strange peace in the work. It was different from the busy human colonies he had known, where machines did everything. Here, people worked with their own hands, connected to the forest around them. Nira stayed close to him. She showed him which plants were safe to eat and which ones were poisonous. She taught him how to listen to the forest, how the rustle of leaves, the calls of animals, and even the silence could mean danger. Ryan admired her knowledge. She moved through the trees like she was part of them, silent and graceful, her silver hair flowing like water. One day, Nero led him to a small stream. She dipped her hand into the water and pulled out a cluster of bright green roots. Food, she explained simply, offering them to him. Ryan tasted one and smiled. Not bad, he said, though the flavor was strange. Nero laughed softly, her ears flicking with amusement. As the days passed, Ryan noticed how Nero often stayed close even when she did not need to. When he struggled with a task, she helped without hesitation. When the villagers whispered doubts, she defended him with firm words. At night, when the village gathered around fires, she always sat beside him, her tail curled neatly around her legs. Slowly, the villagers' attitude toward Ryan began to change. They no longer looked at him as a stranger who might bring danger. They started to see him as someone willing to learn, someone who respected their traditions. But not all were convinced. The tall man with dark stripes on his arms, named Jairo, often watched Ryan with narrowed eyes. He spoke little, but his distrust was clear. Once, when Ryan tried to help sharpen hunting spears, Jairo muttered something under his breath, making several others laugh. Ryan did not understand the words, but the tone stung. Nira noticed and glared at Jairo, her ears pressed flat in anger. Ryan only shook his head. "It's fine," he said quietly. "Trust takes time." Despite Jairo's dislike, Ryan continued to prove himself. He used his human knowledge to improve small things around the village. He showed them how to tie stronger rope from vines, how to build sturdier supports for bridges, and how to make fire last longer through the night. The biggest change came when Ryan repaired an old wooden gate at the edge of the village. The gate had been weak for years, and villagers worried it would not hold if beasts attacked. Ryan worked for 3 days, carving stronger beams and fastening them with clever knots. When he was done, the gate stood firm. The villagers tested it and cheered. Even the elder nodded in approval. Children climbed on it, laughing, while Nira's eyes sparkled with pride. That night, as they sat under the glowing orbs, Nira whispered softly, "You, make village strong. Before, beasts scare us. Now, less fear." Ryan looked at her, noticing the way the light reflected in her green eyes. "I only did what I could," he said. "But I'm glad if it helps." Nira's ears flicked forward, and her tail curled slowly. She lowered her voice further, almost shy. "With you, I feel safe. Different safe." Her words stayed with him long after she left to her hut. Still, peace never lasted long in the forest. One evening, scouts returned with troubling news. Beasts had been seen closer to the village again, larger and more aggressive than before. The villagers grew uneasy, and Jairo spoke loudly, saying it was foolish to trust a human during dangerous times. But the elder silenced him. "The forest changes," Nira translated. "Something stirs. We must prepare." Ryan felt a heavy weight in his chest. He had fought one beast and survived, but if many came, the village would not stand a chance without proper defense. He knew he could not leave them now, not when Nero looked at him with such trust, not when the children laughed freely because of the stronger gate he built. That night, as the fire crackled, Ryan made a quiet promise to himself. He would fight for the village as if it were his own. He would learn more, work harder, and protect them no matter what waited in the shadows of the forest. And deep inside, though he barely admitted it to himself, he knew the true reason: he wanted to keep Nira safe above all. The forest seemed uneasy in the days that followed. Ryan noticed it first during his walks with Nira. The birds no longer sang as loudly, and the smaller animals stayed hidden. Even the wind through the trees felt different, heavier, carrying a tension that made the hairs on his neck rise. The villagers felt it too. Hunters returned with fewer catches. Scouts reported seeing claw marks on trees far larger than before. Whispers spread quickly through the village, and fear hung over everyone like a dark cloud. One night, the elder called a meeting. The whole village gathered around the great fire, their faces lit by flickering flames. Ryan sat near Nira, listening closely as the elder spoke in his deep voice. Nira translated quietly. Elder say, beasts restless. Many more. Stronger. They move together now. The villagers murmured nervously. Some clutched their children close, others whispered prayers. Then Jero stood up, his striped arms catching the firelight. He pointed at Ryan. This human bring bad luck, he declared in his own tongue, but his meaning was clear. Since he came, beasts grow bold. Murmurs rose again. Ryan clenched his fists but stayed quiet. He knew arguing would not help. But Nero leapt to her feet, her voice sharp. She spoke quickly, her tail lashing with anger. Though Ryan could not catch every word, he understood her meaning. She defended him. She turned to Ryan and said firmly, not your fault. Beasts come anyway. Elder knows. The elder raised his staff, silencing the argument. His gaze swept over the people before he spoke again. Nero leaned close to translate. We must prepare. We fight, not run. For the first time, the villagers would stand against the beasts instead of hiding. The next days were filled with work. Men and women sharpened spears, repaired walls, and prepared traps near the village gates. Ryan used his human knowledge to help. He showed them how to build simple barricades from heavy logs, how to set pits that could slow the creatures, and how to organize their defense. Some villagers still eyed him with doubt, but most followed his instructions. They had little choice. The danger was growing too close to ignore. Nira stayed by his side. She practiced with her wooden spear, her movements clumsy at first but improving with each day. Ryan noticed her determination. She wanted to fight, not just watch. You don't have to, he told her one evening as they trained near the edge of the village. Her green eyes met his firmly. I fight. With you, she said, her voice steady. Ryan could not argue. Deep down, he respected her courage. The attack came sooner than anyone expected. It was late afternoon when the first roar shook the forest. Birds exploded from the trees, and the ground trembled as heavy steps approached. Villagers rushed to their positions, gripping spears and bows. Children were gathered into the central huts for safety. Ryan stood at the gate, a sharpened spear in hand. Nero was beside him, her face pale but her stance ready. The beasts appeared through the shadows, 3 of them, larger than the one Ryan had fought before. Their bodies were massive, their teeth gleaming as they snarled. The villagers gasped in fear. The creatures charged. Hold! Ryan shouted, raising his arm. The villagers braced themselves. At the last moment, the beasts triggered the hidden traps. One fell into a pit, roaring angrily. Another was slowed by heavy logs crashing down from above. But the third broke through, slamming against the wooden gate. The gate shuddered but held. Ryan thrust his spear forward, striking the beast's shoulder. It howled and swiped at him with sharp claws. Ryan barely dodged, the wind from its strike brushing against his cheek. Villagers rushed to his side, spears stabbing at the creature. Nira darted in with surprising speed, jabbing her weapon at its flank. Her hands shook, but her aim was true. The beast roared, staggering back. Now! Ryan shouted. Together, they pushed it away from the gate, forcing it back into the forest. The battle was fierce, but the traps and teamwork worked. The beast in the pit was finished with arrows, while the second fled after being wounded. The last creature, though strong, could not withstand the villagers united as one. With one final strike, it collapsed. Silence followed. Only the heavy breathing of the villagers and the crackle of the fires remained. Then, slowly, cheers rose. The villagers shouted in victory, raising their spears high. For the first time, they had fought the beasts and won. That night, the village gathered again around the fire, but this time the mood was different. Instead of fear, there was celebration. The people sang, shared food, and laughed together. Children danced around the fire, no longer afraid. Ryan sat near the flames, his body sore but his spirit strong. He looked at the villagers, who now greeted him with respect in their eyes. Even Jairo, though silent, no longer glared with the same anger. Nira sat beside Ryan, her tail curled close, her green eyes glowing in the firelight. She held a small cloth of herbs and pressed it gently against a cut on his arm. "You fight strong," she whispered. "With you, we win." Ryan smiled at her words. For the first time, he truly felt like part of the village. But deep inside, he also knew this was only the beginning. The beasts would return, stronger than before, and something else in the forest was stirring. As the fire crackled, Nira's hand brushed against his. She didn't pull away, and neither did he. For that moment, under the stars, they were not just human and alien. They were allies standing together against the darkness of the wild world. The village had won its first battle, but the victory did not bring peace for long. Scouts soon reported that the beasts were still gathering deeper in the forest, their numbers growing. The people whispered in worry, asking why the creatures had suddenly become so bold. Ryan thought about it often. He had fought beasts before, but these new attacks felt different. They were not random. It was as if something was pulling the creatures closer to the village. One evening, as the sky turned orange and the forest glowed in the fading light, Ryan spoke with Nira near the gate. "These attacks won't stop on their own," he said, staring at the dark trees. "We need to find out what's driving them." Nira's ears twitched as she listened. She looked uneasy but nodded slowly. "Forest, wrong," she admitted. "Beasts not normal. Something call them." Her words matched his thoughts. The next morning, with the elders' permission, Ryan and Nira set out to search the deeper forest. The journey was not easy. The trees grew thicker, and the air felt heavy, almost charged with invisible energy. Strange plants glowed faintly under the shade, and the ground was littered with claw marks. Ryan carried a spear and a small knife, while Nira moved silently beside him, her senses sharp. More than once, she warned him of danger before he could see it. Once, she held him back just in time to avoid a patch of ground that collapsed into a hidden pit. Hours passed before they noticed something unusual. The sound of running water led them to a hidden stream, but the water glowed faintly blue, like liquid light. It trickled from the rocks and flowed toward the heart of the forest. Nira crouched beside it, her tail flicking nervously. "Not normal," she whispered. They followed the glowing stream until it led them to a wide clearing. There, half buried in roots and moss, stood the remains of a massive structure. Ryan froze, his breath catching. The walls were metallic, not natural stone, covered in strange symbols. Broken panels lay scattered, and pieces of machinery hummed weakly, still alive after all this time. "This," he whispered. "It's old technology. Very old. Maybe not from your people or mine." Nira's eyes widened as she stepped closer, ears tilted forward. "Forest heart," she whispered. "Our people never come here. Too dangerous." As Ryan examined the structure, he realized the faint hum came from a damaged power core inside the ruins. The energy it leaked was unnatural, and he understood at once, this was what was drawing the beasts. They were attracted, maybe even driven mad, by the energy. He turned to Nira. "This is the reason. If we don't stop it, the attacks will keep coming." Nira looked at the glowing panels nervously. Danger, she said. But, must try. They stepped inside the ruins carefully. The air was thick with static, making their skin prickle. Broken machines sparked faintly in the shadows. Strange markings glowed faintly on the walls, symbols Ryan could not understand. He knelt beside the power core. It pulsed with light, cracked and unstable. It's unstable, he muttered. If it bursts, it could destroy half the forest. Nira crouched beside him, watching closely. You can fix. Ryan shook his head. Not fix. But maybe shut down. He worked quickly, pulling loose wires and forcing panels open with his knife. The hum grew louder, and the ground trembled slightly. Outside, distant roars echoed, as if the beasts could feel what was happening. Suddenly, one of the creatures burst from the trees, snarling. Its massive body blocked the entrance. Nero leapt to her feet, spear in hand. I hold, she shouted. Ryan's heart pounded. He had no time to argue. Be careful, he called, turning back to the core. Nero faced the beast, her movements quick and sharp. She darted aside as it lunged, stabbing her spear into its shoulder. The creature roared, swiping its claws, but she rolled away with surprising agility. Inside, Ryan pulled at the last wires, sparks flying. The core flared brighter, then dimmed suddenly. The humming slowed, fading into silence. At that exact moment, the beast stopped. Its glowing eyes flickered with confusion, and it backed away slowly before vanishing into the forest. Nero lowered her spear, breathing hard. Sweat ran down her forehead, but her green eyes burned with determination. Ryan stepped toward her, relief flooding him. You did it? We did it, he said. She gave a small smile, her tail swaying slowly. Together. The two of them left the ruins behind, watching as the glow from the stream began to fade. The forest felt lighter now, as if it had been freed from a weight. By the time they returned to the village, night had fallen. The people gathered quickly as Nira explained what they had found. Though they did not fully understand the ancient ruins, they believed her when she said the beasts would no longer come in such numbers. The elder listened in silence, then finally nodded. Forest safe, for now, Nira translated. Thanks to you. Later, as the village grew quiet, Nira found Ryan sitting near the fire. She sat beside him, her voice soft. When Beast came, I thought I lose you. But you stay. You fight. You care. Her words carried a weight that made Ryan pause. She lowered her head slightly, her silver hair falling across her face. Then, almost like a secret, she whispered, I don't want you to leave. Ryan looked at her, his heart stirring. He had meant only to survive this world and return to his ship. But now, looking at Nero beside him, he realized leaving might not be so simple. The night stretched quiet around them, but in that silence, a bond stronger than fear or battle was beginning to take root. The night after the ruins were silenced felt strangely calm. The forest, which once echoed with distant roars, now hummed with quiet life. Crickets sang, the wind rustled the leaves gently, and the village fires burned softly under the stars. For the first time since Ryan had arrived, there was no fear pressing down on everyone. Ryan sat near the fire, sharpening his spear out of habit. His mind, however, was far from the weapon. He thought about what he had seen in the ruins, machines buried under roots, energy still alive after who knows how many centuries. Somewhere in his heart, he knew those ruins were not the last. If one lay hidden so close, there must be others scattered across the planet. Beside him, Nira sat quietly, her tail curled around her legs. She did not speak at first, simply watching the flames. At last, she said softly, Village safe now. But you still think of danger. Ryan smiled faintly. You see right through me, don't you? She tilted her head, her silver hair glowing in the firelight. "You are easy to read," she replied, her voice gentle. "Your eyes never rest." He chuckled, though his chest felt heavy. "I was trained to always look for the next threat. Even when things are calm, I can't forget what might come." Nira's ears flicked, but instead of sadness, she gave him a steady look. "Then don't forget," she said. "But, don't be alone, either." Her words settled inside him like an anchor. For so long, he had walked his path alone, never expecting to stay anywhere. But Nira spoke as if she wanted him to share that burden with her. The next morning, the elder called the village together. Nira stood proudly beside Ryan, her green eyes bright as she translated the elder's words. "The forest is calmer now," she explained to Ryan, "but the people know danger will come again. They want to be ready. They ask you to guide them." Ryan blinked in surprise. "Me? Guide them?" Nira nodded. "You fight, you think, you plan. You showed courage. They believe you can teach them." At first, Ryan hesitated. He was just one man, stranded far from his own world. Yet when he looked around, he saw the villagers' faces hopeful, trusting. For the first time, he realized that they did not see him as an outsider anymore. They saw him as one of their own. Slowly, he nodded. "All right. I'll help. But we'll need to work together. Everyone must learn, not just depend on me." The elder smiled at this, and the people murmured their agreement. In the days that followed, Ryan began to train the villagers. He taught them how to strengthen their defenses, how to set traps without harming themselves, and how to fight with discipline rather than panic. At first, it was difficult. Many stumbled or lost courage. But Nira stood beside him through every lesson. Her speed and sharp instincts impressed everyone, and soon she became the bridge between Ryan's strange ways and the village's traditions. One evening, after a long day of training, Nira surprised Ryan by placing a hand on his arm. "They listen because you care," she said quietly. "You don't command. You guide." Ryan looked at her, seeing the admiration in her eyes. "And they follow because of you," he replied. "Without you, they wouldn't trust me at all." Nira gave a soft laugh. "Then we are stronger, together." Weeks passed, and the bond between Ryan and Nira deepened. They shared food by the fire, walked the village at night, and sometimes sat quietly by the forest edge, saying little but understanding much. One night, as the stars shone brighter than usual, Nira finally spoke the words she had been holding back. "When you came, I thought you were just another outsider. But now, I cannot imagine this place without you." Ryan felt his chest tighten. "Nira," she leaned closer, her voice soft as a whisper. "I want you to stay. Not only for the village. For me." For a long moment, he said nothing. His heart wrestled with the thought of his broken ship, the stars that once called to him, the duty to return home. Yet when he looked into Nira's eyes, he realized something important: home was not always a place. Sometimes, it was a person. He reached out, gently taking her hand. "Then I'll stay," he said firmly. "If you'll have me." Her smile lit up the night more than the stars above. Time moved on, and the village changed. With Ryan's guidance and Nira's spirit, they grew stronger than ever before. The beasts of the forest no longer dared to come near so often, and when they did, the people stood ready. Stories began to spread, not just within the village, but beyond. Stories of the human warrior who fought off a wild beast to save a girl, and of the alien cat girl who whispered her heart to him. Together, they had turned fear into courage, weakness into strength. And in the quiet moments, when no one else was watching, Ryan and Nira found peace in each other's company. The battles they had fought were not forgotten, but neither were the promises they had made. For Ryan, who once thought himself lost on a strange world, this was no longer just survival. It was a new beginning. And for Nira, who once feared losing everything, it was the start of something she had never dreamed possible, a life shared with someone who saw her not as different, but as equal. As the sun rose one morning, painting the forest in gold, Nero leaned against Ryan at the village gate. The world ahead was still uncertain, but they faced it together, side by side. Whatever challenges came next, one truth was clear. Humanity's strength was not only in weapons or knowledge. It was in connection, in the courage to care for another. And now, in a small village on a distant world, that truth had found a place to grow.